Hi, I'm Paulo from Tupan Games, and today we will start the 300 series of our criteria course. To be able to take this course, you must have an excellent knowledge of how criteria works. You should already understand how to get user input, how to create actions, what info is for, how to pass parameters, create variables, and how to show results on screen. From this course on, I will no longer create nodes in real time. I will show you infos like this one and other routines previously made, and we will discuss in detail how each of them works. If you still have difficulty understanding how the commands and criteria expressions work, I strongly suggest reviewing the 100 and 200 series. Also, this series will be much more theoretical than the previous ones. It is very important that you understand why certain criteria objects exist, like rules or conditions and so on. We will discuss rules and the connection of these rules with the rest of criteria. And we will also discuss exceptions and possible criteria limitations. In traditional programming, you have action buttons on the screen or something that the user uses and the program responds. For example, when you create an action within criteria, you have data entries here, and then you have programming that works on top of this data. This works very well when you have an action like ability check or skill check, or even info as a weapon attack like this one. However, RPG rules are basically made of two pieces. One is the rules that apply to RPG as a whole, and the other part that is usually much more and much bigger are exceptions. If you have an armor class, you usually add the bonus value of your dexterity in the armor class, except if you are a barbarian and you are not wearing any armor. In this case, you, in addition to adding the dexterity, will add constitution. That is, the rules part of criteria was made exactly to deal with this type of situation. And the idea that is very important theoretically is that you create a rule for each thing that is together with the paper and pen rule. For example, level 1 of Barbarian has the features of the Barbarian here. So the idea is that we can make a rule that has all these things here and connect this to the level 1 of Barbarian. As an example, we will implement this one, the unarmed defense, that is the simplest. One important thing we have to understand about rules is that they are completely decoupled from actions. They are not linked to any action, and no action is linked to any rule. They are complementary things. This is a rule. This rule implements the non-armor wearing of the barbarian. It checks if the barbarian is not wearing any armor here, and then it uses the Constitution ability modifier to add to an info. How this works? This node, in fact, is adding a value to the result of this information. Every time someone calls the info armor class, it will add this value if this rule is true. Since the armor class already understands dexterity and has rules to use dexterity, we just need to add the ability modifier from Constitution. Again, let me explain this. this node will modify the return value of an information. It could modify an output parameter, for instance, but in this case it's modifying the return value, and will get the original value and add this. Of course, if you want to add a negative value, it will work. So if you want to give a malus to any information, you can use this here. You may notice that this is a very powerful tool, because if you have used your information correctly, you may now get a rule to change any information based on specific conditions. And more important than that, we will try to keep everything that's tied to Rule Barbarian level 1 here. For instance, rage will be here in the future. Now, this bonus stack here is tied to this table, which is a mandatory table. We will add some bonus stack here, and we call this no stack. What this means? It means that everything that uses this bonus stack line have no stack with other rules. If there are other rules that adds constitution to the armor class, it will not do that twice. And this is important. There are times when you want things to stack, and there are times when you do not. And when you do want things to stack, you just click here, stacks. You can create as many bonus stacks lines you want. And you use this to know which kind of bonuses stacks and which kind of bonuses does not stack. Now I will put here the other bonuses here just for you to know them. Then we have, for instance, the stat bonus. The stat bonus, instead of changing the result of an information, it changes a field. For instance, you may have a rule that says when this and that happens, you have +2 bonus on Constitution. Okay? For instance, here you have +2 bonus on Constitution, and you have to change a stack for that. And this icon will be used in the journal, of course. Usually those kind of things are inside an if statement, okay? Because if you don't put that into an if statement, it will just add 2 to the Constitution every time. One thing to keep in mind is that these bonuses, rules, info bonus, stat bonus, and table bonus are meant to be used with numeric fields because they add something numeric. You can use integer fields or float fields. It will work with both. But if you try to add something to a text, it will not work. Don't do that. So let's look at the table bonus. The table bonus, instead of modifying an information or a stat, modifies a column of a table. For instance, let's look at perhaps armor. Armor has an AC column. Perhaps you have a rule saying something like, if you are in this or that situation, you have -2 in your armor class. But this is only related to the armor you are wearing. Okay? So you can put here -2. Each time you accessed that column in anywhere in criteria, it will subtract 2 of that value. I will give you an example. The info armor class, we access that field. Here, table field, armor class. If you have that rule will get the value of this node and subtract 2 without you having to do anything in this rule. The idea, the theoretical idea is this. You will have here the common rule for everything. And in the rule, you have a specific rule for a specific situation. And since we keep things separately, I think that will be a good way of trying to implement pen and paper rules. Now, you may have noticed that I do not ask for class here. I'm not making an if saying if this guy is a barbarian and if this guy is a barbarian level 1, because it could be a barbarian level 5 rule. How can we kind of filter the rules for barbarians? There's two ways of adding a rule to criteria. First, of course, you fill the rule here, you put the rule here, but only this will not add the rule. The rule must be added either by clicking on Always Active or to activate that rule in a special information called criteria rules. And to activate a rule, you use the node Activate Rule. Let's do a simple thing here. Suppose that I want to activate that rule in a simple way. Okay, I will simply activate rule and choose the rule here. Every rule will be listed here. But that's a poor way of doing things. Let's look at the tables. For instance, I created a classes table, you already know this, but I created also a class level table. This class level table has the characteristics that are tied to the level and a class. And we have a key class that belongs to a table classes, a level which is an integer, and we have a data field of data type multiple rule. How this works? When you have a multiple rule field, you click here and you choose multiple rules that will be tied to anything that has here. For instance, I only filled one rule, but if I have 50 rules, the 50 rules will appear here and you can choose several. And this is a very simple way to tie rules to a class, because you may want that for your users to add new classes in the future. I want to add a new class, and each level of this class will have some rules. You do that here. Now I will return to our info criteria rules and see how we use that table to activate those rules. You may notice that we have one for each here, which is a loop for each class that particular character has. And we have another loop inside the first loop for each line in the table class level. This hourglass here returns the class that the character has, and this hourglass here returns the class that are in the line of this table. If our character has its equal that class, so he is a barbarian, or at least he has a level of barbarian, and that level, because you may remember that the classes inventory has a class and a level. It may be a barbarian level 5, a barbarian level 2, it may have a level of ranger, and so on. We just look if the character level is greater or equal the level in this table. So if we have a barbarian level 5 and we have barbarian level 1, barbarian level 2, barbarian level 3, barbarian level 4, he will have everything that these classes have, including barbarian level 5. But it will not have barbarian level 6, barbarian level 7, because this table will be filled for all possible levels of barbarian. Returning here, we look if the class is the same, and we look if the level is greater or equal the table. And if this is true, then we activate that field. This current for class level comes from here, and these current classes come from here. So this is the way, a generic way to activate rules. And in the future, we will just keep adding levels here and creating those rules. And criteria will automatically add those rules to that character. Let's test this. First, we have a barbarian here. Okay, he is a barbarian, level 1. He is here, he's a class. And he's not wearing any armor. We will have a werewolf here that will attack. And this is just a test. Okay. $15. It hits. Okay. Let's look at the journal. The journal, the attack we already know, but the journal, the barbarian has 18 constitution, so it gives a +4 modifier and a dex of 1. He has no armor, it adds 10. So 10 plus 1 plus 4 gives a armor class of 15. It's working. And here is the result of that rule. If we get that barbarian and start wearing armor, for instance, a leather, let's see what will happen. Now, the barbarian now has leather. Okay. The leather has armor 11, dex 1, and allows dex bonus and gives an armor class of 12. And you may notice that constitution is not showing here because the rule is not applied. The rule is only applied when he is not wearing any armor. We have modified the armor class without having modified anything in the armor class info. I personally believe that rules are the most powerful thing in criteria, maybe along with the input. I put this into the end of the course because I know this is complicated. It's difficult to understand because it's not traditional programming. But I strongly think that this is the best way to implement exceptions in criteria.